This is a concern because equality is one of our testimonies. So if we don't understand what we mean by it, then how can we talk about it? How can we act on it? And if we don't understand what other people mean by it, then how can we discuss it with them? How can we ask them to act on it? To understand something is not to put it in a glass case and treat it like an antiquity, but to examine it, to pull it apart, to turn it over, to break it, to put it back together again, to help it evolve. J.W. Rowntree said that the doctrine of the inward light, upon which the tongue so lightly trips, requires searching elucidation. And I would add to that beautiful phrase that actually even the most powerful truths become self-evident less through external events than through inward contemplation. We have a history to share. We can lead by example. George Fox laughed at the suggestion that women had no more souls than geese. The power and the Spirit of God gives equality to all, he said. And he meant all. The fundamental equality of all makes us all powerful. Sometimes we forget that people are diverse. Sometimes we forget that not everybody is exactly like us, that we live in our own little bubbles, whether those be communities or whether those be people-shaped bubbles. And sometimes we forget that our community feels safe, not because there is no challenge, but because we challenge in love. What faith communities can offer is a measurement of human value that is based on the human spirit. And this stands in stark contrast to those who would measure human value based on how much someone owns, how much someone earns, how much power someone wields. This is what makes us different. The testimonies we have are testimonies of value, and they often cut across secular definitions. They fit into one another. They are entwined with one another. We all contain a little sliver of the divine, but because we are all different, that little sliver, that little piece of God, happens to be in a completely different place in each of us. The seeds of war and the seeds of conflict are too often planted and watered by discrimination, by prejudice. We do share our lives. We have entwined journeys, spiritual or secular, but what we do is still at heart personal. So the next question is how? How do we get to a more equal society? What can we do to change it? What is the one thing that we can do, the something which must be done? While it can be very useful to say something must be done, it is much more useful when we can also say what that something is and how it can be done. Speaking truth to power becomes more useful, more efficient, more effective when it's backed up by realistic ideas, by realistic plans, something that can actually be done. Speaking truth to power is often not as effective as discussing truth with power. I would caution against the suggestion that we simply ask our elected representatives to bring us equality. That's because it can be difficult to see, difficult to get the balance right, and all too easy to mistake. Too many people think that they know exactly what equality looks like for everyone, and that must surely come close to denying the personal freedom which underpins equality. Furthermore, this isn't the sort of thing that we can demand. It's not the sort of thing we can impose, because as soon as we impose it on others, then it becomes worthless. Someone else's views, someone else's values. It doesn't become equality. And if we think it's a process rather than a set of results, then it's not the sort of thing we can demand. There's no panacea. There's no easy and quick way to get to a more equal situation, a more equal society. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. This is a vision for all of us to speak to a more equal world, for all of us to dream of it, to think about it, to strive of it, to never give it up as lost. This isn't a naive suggestion that everything is good, but the ability to see that which is good in every situation. Yes, change comes slowly, and yes, it's difficult, but let us at least try. Let us at least see what we can do. Let us get there. What is more equal, a more equal society, comes slowly. It's achieved over time. Radical change over a non-radical period of time. Consider the discussion around sexuality, the discussion around equal marriage. Consider how far that has come, how long it took. The goal was achieved in fewer years because every step, and it was step by step, but every step was a step forwards. To work slowly does not mean not working. It doesn't mean inaction. It doesn't mean quietism. On the contrary, it provides a solid base from which to reach yet further and higher. The way we want to be treated, the way we want to treat others, is in a fair way. We're not just working on instinct. We have a socially developed sense of justice, one which keeps the community together. Because this arises from us being social creatures, we can change it. We can slowly change our cultural norms. But we must ensure that we take everybody with us, that it is not just the privileged, and it's not just us making decisions for everybody else. To me, this points towards social campaigns rather than legislation for achieving that change. Because to have somebody else with experiences 1,000,000 miles away from me making decisions about me as if I was a weaker sort of human being, that seems to be a misuse of privilege. This is important, and it's important that we get it right. I think that a legal framework can only serve to uphold rights which are already broadly agreed by the community. Only rarely can a legal framework, can new legislation create an acceptance which is not to a large extent already present. Too often the problems that people face are about how other people see them rather than about legal barriers. They could be practical, or they could be in people's minds, in people's thoughts, in people's views of them, in the norms of society. So we have to find a way to get past tradition, because it can be strong, it can be malicious. Our shared sense of fairness says that hard work should be rewarded, but not that vast treasures should be given to a very few. This isn't a suggestion that prizes be given to all, but that there should be more than one prize, because the skills needed for the egg and spoon race are different from the skills needed for the three-legged race. Actually, we should just work towards structures and institutions which promote different skills. We should think about how we can widen the skills which we value, widen the list of things which are rewarded. We should build and support structures which promote shared ownership, which promote responsibility, whether that be at the personal level or at the community level. We should work towards something which reminds us why we are all human.